I recently started trying builds from the used, very, very budget end of the market. You know that end of the market where you just buy an old Dell Optiplex and then turn it into an old Dell Optiplex with the graphics card in it. And I've had mixed success. But when I saw an old, used gaming pre-built system for not very much money, I thought, aha, this is the life hack. This is how you get really good gaming performance for not very much money. You just buy an old, purpose-built gaming system, put a better graphics card in there, and then get some great gaming performance for not very much money. The problem started when I opened up the side panel and boss battle music started playing. This PC was real nasty. Now, before we get further in the video, I just want to say, when I bought this PC off of Craigslist, I did have a brief look inside the system, but I think the guy very strategically cleaned it in a way that you couldn't tell from a quick glance just how much of a piggy this little system really is. It was only once I started taking it apart that I realized that this was absolutely disgusting. And here it is, what a beauty. It's an old iBuy power system, and you can actually tell that it's an old iBuy power system because it still has front airflow, which really does date it. There's some airflow over here as well. One of the biggest problems of buying these very used PCs is that they are dirtier than a strip club on $5 beer night. Although, I think this one is specifically dirty, but cleaning is part of the process, I guess, right? Although you don't get that very satisfying feeling of unboxing a brand new PC. Around the back, we've got a whole lot more dirt, and we've actually got a pretty dated rear I/O here, as you can see. It's got no USB 3, but luckily, they added a USB 3 card, so we do have some high-speed connectivity. I love how back in the day, they used to add these water cooling grommets on cases that clearly had no support for water cooling. Yeah, that was a really weird trend. Now, before we clean this little piggy, let's have a look inside to see what kind of cable management we're working with. Now, I had a brief look inside when I bought it, and it was really terrible, but maybe it was better than I remember it to be. Ugh. Oh, okay, it clearly wasn't better than I remember it to be. That is a rat's nest if I've ever seen one. Look at that. That's even worse than that Amazon pre-built, isn't it? That's a crazy mess in there. I don't necessarily know who to blame for that, because the system is so old it still gets its news off of Facebook, so it could have been the guy that tried to reset everything up and then just didn't care about the cable management. I'm curious to see how much better I can do it, because there are actually holes for cable management around the back of the motherboard tray. But as we know with some of these worse cases, just because it's got holes doesn't mean we can fill them. But as far as components go, we've got a GTX 560 in here. It looks like a Direct Copper 2 Asus variant. I'll have a closer look at that now, which is actually a pretty decent card when it came out, although that's going to really struggle with modern games. So I'm going to switch that out for something a bit more capable. The CPU is an FX 8120, if I'm not mistaken, according to the guy, under this fairly beefy looking cooler, so temperature should be fine. Again, I just want to clean it out. The power supply is 600 watts. It's a Cooler Master unit that doesn't look amazing, but that's one of the big advantages for this kind of system over the other small form factor systems, is you have 600 watt as opposed to like 240 watt available, and a case that can actually fit things in it. So we are going to be able to drop an RX 570 in here, which secondhand you can get for like 90 Canadian dollars. So that's a really good deal. Definitely going to drop one of those in there. It's got 8 gigs of DDR3 and a normal hard drive. Actually, how big is the hard drive? 1 terabyte. Oh, fancy. I find it funny that they didn't even bother to plug in the DVD drive. This guy clearly knows what's up. And then the final thing that I want to point out before I take this thing apart and clean it is that is probably the worst motherboard connector placement I think I've ever seen on a PC. Yeah, that's pretty hilarious. So with that, let's take it apart, clean it, and see if we can fix up the cable management. When looking at the back, there is actually some space for cable management here, as you can see, and if we have the side panel on, it does actually have quite a big bulge in it, so we should be fine to route the cables around here. This is pretty funny how just blatantly it's been ignored. Another good thing about the case is that it does have this cutout so you can easily access the CPU cooler mounting, which is good because you have to unscrew the cooler from the back like this, which just seems like it's gonna end in disaster. The thermal paste is actually not dry, so I wonder, maybe the guy did replace the thermal paste. Okay, so it's an 8120, I just forgot the model number, that's my bad. But that is an exceptionally basic motherboard. As is always the case with pre-built systems motherboards, apparently even ages ago, it's got a terrible VRM and a bunch of really lame features. They always skimp on the motherboard. For some reason, they actually have this chassis fan plugged in via Molex and the fan connector on the motherboard. So I guess they just wanted to be double sure that this fan's getting power. When I first saw the back of the PC, I thought, yeah, this fan's gonna be pretty gross. But then when I took it off, ew, just look at it. It's kind of gone everywhere as well. It took me ages to clean it up. And then I took off the front panel, which was pretty dirty, but it didn't compare at all to the front fan. That's so disgusting. Look at it. It looks like Tatooine got sucked into the fan somehow. I'm actually scared to clean that. I feel like there's some yet to be discovered species living in there. Okay, that took ages. I actually ended up tearing the whole thing down to clean it, which I didn't really want to have to do. It's not perfect yet, but it doesn't trigger my gag reflex anymore, so I feel like it's good enough. At this point, I feel like I actually have to smelt it down and reforge it to get it any better than it is now. Hygiene-wise, I also think it's okay. I used so much alcohol on it that it kind of smells like a distillery gave birth to a hospital. Yeah, so I'm not scared of any new diseases being discovered on it anymore. So now let's put the little piggy back together and see how it performs and do all kinds of tests and stuff. So now that I've spent ages hosing the little piggy down and putting it back together, let's compare Dawid cable management to whoever the hell cable managed that system before me. As you can see, it looks a lot better. It really does look a lot better in my opinion. It still has a bit of a Red Tide vibe going to it because of all of that ketchup and mustard, but they could have hidden all of those cables. This case is actually not that bad to build in, honestly, especially considering the fact that it's an older case. It's pretty well put together. The biggest problem with this case, in my opinion, is the fact that they used this matte black paint finish, which must have looked really cool when it was new, but now it's pretty much impossible to clean and it looks really disgusting. It's still got this oily finish to it. It feels a little bit like it's been stored in someone's ear for several years. It's I do want to give a quick shout out to the real MVP of this video, which is isopropyl alcohol. Isopropyl alcohol for when your pig can't clean itself. But now we get to the part of the video where I tell you that I drop an RX 570 in here and then get some mad gaming performance for about $200 US. There's a bit of a problem with that though, because I tried for ages and I just couldn't get an RX 570 to work in here. It just refused to install the drivers. I don't know what was going on. I tried several different driver versions. I actually reinstalled Windows again and it still didn't work. And then I tried a GTX 1050 Ti in there, which the drivers installed and it worked. The GTX 560 also works. I'm pretty sure that RX 570 works. I've used it in several videos before. So yeah, I'm gonna figure that out, and I'll find a way to upgrade this, and we'll do that in a follow-up video. But what we're gonna do for the remainder of this video is just see what kind of gaming performance we get from the FX Bulldozer Loser CPU combined with the GTX 560. I can't imagine it's gonna go very well, but I'm still curious. Let's have a look at some benchmarks. Now, not surprisingly, the benchmarks aren't particularly impressive. CSGO gets a reasonably high average frame rate, and when actually playing in a real match, the average frame rate is like 120 FPS, but CSGO does this weird thing where if it doesn't have enough power, you still get a high frame rate, but you get this really weird lag. It's quite difficult to pick up on camera. I'll try and show you here, but it's pretty much unplayable, even though its average frame rate is really high. Another thing to note is that the DVI ports on the back of this graphics card only supports up to 60 Hz at 1080p. So it means that even if you have a 1080p higher refresh rate monitor, you're not going to be able to output it on games like Tetris or whatever that the graphics card can handle that at. Although if you're buying at this price point, that's obviously not really a consideration. GTA 5 performed weirdly well. It was the most playable game out of all of them, but I have a bit of a suspicion that GTA 5 really likes bull loser CPUs, because I've heard from a couple of people that GTA 5 runs really well on their FX AMD CPU based systems. So yeah, it is a pretty thread hungry game, so maybe that has something to do with it. I tried to run PUBG and Fortnite on it, but neither of them would run. PUBG would just stick in the loading screen, then you'd hear yourself jump out of the plane and then get shot at the edge of the map, still while loading. It's pretty weird, but yeah, so that happened, and yeah, Fortnite just didn't work. So all in all, the GTX 560 is not a great GPU for playing any semblance of modern game. Although again, Dota and GTA works pretty well. So if that's all you play, then yeah, buy a GTX 560. So that brings me to the end of cleaning up this stank-ass gross PC. So if you enjoyed it, like and subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna do a follow-up video where I upgrade this with a higher end graphics card that actually makes sense budget-wise. I'll see what kind of power we can get in here. And yeah, until the next video, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.